Hi, Sol. Thank you for joining us. We've got Sol Atkinson here, a local architect. And Sol, I really love the work you're doing at the moment. And I was curious if you could tell us where you got started, how you got started in this industry.
Yeah, so like most people, I guess I started at university. I went to Victoria and Wellington, did the 5-year degree down there, which were the last round of bachelor students go through before they changed it to be a master's. So 5 years of university down there, and I did some part-time work with some architects from third year. I think I had a job with an architect down there, and then straight out of university went into a larger practice in Wellington. And my year was basically the last year to get jobs before the GFC kicked in. A pretty interesting entry into the industry, but very fortunate that the place I went and worked out straight out of university, we had some larger jobs. Did my first sort of large scale education project, which sort of carried me through 2 years of project, including a lot of construction observation work, which was great. And then, so after being in Wellington for 10 years in total, 9 years, 10 years, we decided to move, my partner and myself decided to move back to Hawke's Bay. We had some family and basically got jobs here, I got employed with an architect, and Sam got employed with an architectural designer in Hawke. And so after a few years here, I was in business with that architect for a bit. And then with the anticipated arrival of our first child, we thought we'd take the leap and start our own practice together. And really just take control of our time and our direction, and basically, and the rest is history, really. That was 8 years ago now, basically. And we've grown from working out of an outhouse at our old house to we have 2 staff now, and myself and my partner Sam in the business. So 8 years feels like a pretty good run to date. So we feel very lucky. Yeah.
Looking back, so you've been in practice now for 8 years in Hawke's Bay anyway, but looking back...
8 years in this, now practice together, me and Sam. Yeah.
Looking back, one of the questions I always ask people is, what things have changed and what things are constant that you've noticed?
Yeah, I guess the constant out of university has been, my whole career has been digital. So through university, I did a lot of hand drawing presentation work with a little bit of Revit modeling and stuff. But as soon as we're out of university, it was always 3D modeling, BIM, everything like that. So that's been a pretty constant, and just the evolutions of that and the improvement in the quality of the software and the different tools that are available. So that's been a pretty constant one through my career. And I guess, that we've always been very aware of the ups and downs of the industry, having come out of university into a very hard down, and then watching the industry crawl back out of that and go up again, and then experience the pandemic and everything else, which has made for a very interesting time.
So I'm curious, you said that you, from year 3 onwards, you were working part-time as an architect. How did that change what you did at university?
So I was an architectural student, not an architect, architectural student employed as doing a bit of drafting and that sort of thing. And so I guess the first practice I worked for was Jeff Fletcher Architects, who's a really he does amazing residential work, and learned a whole lot around the importance and precision of detail and the consideration of everything as a whole. And it really helped me get through university, because I prefer the realities of our industry, building things and designing things to be built, rather than the idea of a design or that sort of thing. So I don't think I would have necessarily got through the university and without seeing what the industry was actually like on the other side of the degree. That meant that I came out and I knew what I was getting into, and because it's not all design work, my job. A lot of it's administrative and people and technicalities, and that really suits me. Seeing that early on was pretty key, I think.
You must have noticed when you left working for architects and started your own business that actually a lot of your time isn't architecture, it's business.
Yeah, and I guess it was quite different, because when I was in business with the other architect in Hawke's Bay, I didn't have to do a lot of the business as such. But when we started out on our own, and Sam was on maternity leave effectively, I was effectively a sole practitioner for a time. So that was very different to even where we are now. The sole practitioner is exceptionally challenging to do the design work, the documentation, the administration, the business side of it as well.
So, Sol, again, I'm curious how when you did the work for when you were working as an architectural graduate in Wellington while you were going through architecture school, do you think it affected the way you did later work?
Yeah, I guess it's really cemented the type of work I enjoy and the appreciation of subtlety and detail and the construction side of architecture. And I guess it's really brought home that what I sort of describe my job as now and what we like to do is the definition of architecture is the design and construction of buildings. And without the construction part, you're not doing architecture. So to me, it's a really fundamental link. And that's why having that sort of real life experience of what it's like to work in the industry during the degree, which was quite heavily design and conceptual based, seeing that sort of light at the end of the tunnel where I was heading to was pretty essential. And yeah, really made it pretty clear that I was sort of heading in the right direction in terms of my career, I guess.
That's interesting. I think that you did do some of that work. I worked for the Ministry of Works while in my holidays. So every holiday I would work for the Ministry of Works. And I still dimension the way that I picked up from Mark at the Ministry of Works in Auckland. And he had this really lovely, clear graphic. And in those days, we were drawing by hand, where everything was manual drafting. But he used to often draw with a felt tip. And his drawings were so easy to read. They really stood out. And you learn those sort of things that maybe don't come across until later in life if you don't see them early. I just thought it was good that you learned some of that stuff really early. And for me, it was really useful. So that kind of wraps up that part of it. And it's been wonderful having you. We haven't been talking very long, so I've got another question for you, if you don't mind. And that was, Ethan and I spoke about CPD a little while ago. And the question came up as to whether we thought that an employer should pay for the CPD. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, CPD is pretty fundamental. I don't know why an employer wouldn't want to pay for a staff's development, because if you're making a commitment to your staff and employing someone, then your baseline is that they're going to be there for as long as possible. You want them to be as good as possible and enjoy what they're doing as much as possible. And that only comes through keeping people interested, challenged, and growing. I mean, without having taking them to courses or doing other things, I think it'd be pretty remiss to not encourage it and pay for it. Because ultimately, as an employee, you're benefiting from their development. People have said, "Oh, but then they leave and blah blah." But that's how it works. I was encouraged to get registered and do training and all sorts of stuff through my former employers, and it's just part of the deal, really. And if people aren't willing to encourage staff to do that, then they're really missing the opportunity that are people. Because you don't know how good someone is until you push them or until you let them grow into what.
If I understand you correctly, you've encouraged your staff to expand their skill into Homestar.
Yeah, we have. And I guess Homestar is something that we're interested in, and we have conversations with our staff every 6 months as part of a performance appraisal, which is really just a conversation more than anything. And part of that is talking about what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What's your plans? And Homestar, because it is something that we come across a lot and have incorporated into our business, it's a good vehicle of learning an additional layer of complexity. So that's a natural pathway to move into. But we also talk to our staff about LBP and making sure that's on their radar and encourage them to take time in the office to research what's involved. And we keep track of what projects are involved in and making sure we're trying to cover off as much as possible to get them in the right direction for LVP, because they it's just part of making sure everyone's enjoying what they're doing and are challenged at the right level. There's nothing worse than being bored or not being challenged. We're very conscious of even giving someone the same type of project too often, because you can get overdoing the same thing all the time. So you need to be challenged and have things changed. That's the only way to really grow and improve, really.
When I was young, before I was registered, I was really encouraged by my employer to get registered, to do the work needed to become registered. They wanted everybody in the office to become registered as soon as possible. And I think that for them, it was a sign that the business is up to date, that it's fully trained staff. Everyone who could be registered was registered. And so I think for them, it was really good. But I do hear people, local people, say things like, there's no need for my staff to become LBP. I am the LBP. And I think it might come back to their fear that if they get their license, they will leave. But I wonder whether they're going to leave because they're LBP, or they're going to leave eventually because they're not encouraged and challenged and given that extra stuff.
Yeah. I guess my approach is that I just assume people will leave, and that's okay. I expect that. People like me, you expect that you're going to grow and want to do your own thing eventually. And not everyone wants to do that. It's a bit of a nightmare doing your own thing sometimes. So it doesn't suit everyone. And you need to be able to do a whole range of things, talk to people as well as manage business. And so it doesn't suit everyone. But I guess my base assumption is that they will, and that's just part of it. So we basically work towards that one way or another. And if they stay, if they leave, and that's just the cycle, basically.
The company that I worked for in Auckland before I went overseas, they still have some of the same staff there that they had when I was there. They've been there 25, 30 years or more. But I think that part of that was that some of the staff got to do their own thing under the umbrella of the company. Because when you go out on your own, you've got marketing to do, you've got the whole, there's a book called The E-Myth Revisited, which is all about all the other stuff that you have to do. Making sure you got the office, making sure you pay the rent, the insurance, all of that stuff. And all the time that you've got somebody employed that can bring their projects in under the umbrella of the company. And that's what I see happening. And what happened eventually was some of those staff ended up taking over the company. So the company name is now changed, and it's not the same company that I worked for, but there is that DNA is still in there.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've had a bit of a experience of succession planning, which didn't necessarily work. And I don't really, for smaller practices in particular, I don't think there's any real value in the business, because it is really just the people. I can't sell my business because it's me, Sam, and our two staff. And our two staff can leave whenever they want. So there is no value in the business, in my view. With a bigger practice, and you've got multiple directors, and it's really the name of the business rather than the people, probably, that's fine. But when we're talking about a small to medium-sized business, it's purely the people. I don't really see anyone necessarily taking over my business. It's purely a vehicle for us to run our lives and make a living and make it work around us as much as we can. And that's part of anticipating that staff will want the same flexibility and the same, because we can't offer people a big business sort of succession exercise, really. So, yeah, and if people want to do that, go and become an associate and go up the ladder, then there's opportunities for them to do that. But I guess the model that we run is probably a bit simpler, flatter structure. Yeah, so I think in small business, that's probably less applicable, but bigger business, maybe. Yeah.
Oh, thanks very much for your time, Sol. It'd be lovely to have you back again. I've still got more questions, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.